We're now going to turn our attention towards the thumb. I know from my earlier measurements that the first joint on my thumb is 7.3 centimetres round, and I know from measuring my flat pattern that my thumb is 2.5 centimetres across, but because I've got sort of two sides to that, I must remember to double that, so that gives me 5 centimetres. If I subtract 5 centimetres from 7.3 centimetres, the difference is 2.3 centimetres. So I know that within my pattern, that's what I've got to create. Now, yes, I could just line my thumb up with the edge, with the crease on the paper, and factor the difference in that way. But the method I'm going to show you is one that I found particularly useful, particularly when making for other people with larger hands, is I have halved that difference. I've actually rounded it up to 2.5, and I've measured a line that's 1.25 centimetres away from my fold. So I've actually started off with a piece of paper that I have folded, because we're going to open the thumb template out when it's finished. So I've got my fold and I've measured 1.25 centimetres away from it. I'm now going to position my hand, and much like we did with the earlier drawing, I want to position my hand so that my thumb is level with the line that I have drawn. So as close as possible, we want to get at least the sort of the majority of the thumb sat along that line. Now I'm going to mark on the sort of the base of the thumb where my joint is. So I've got one joint here at the base of the thumb, and I've also got my sort of first joint that we measured earlier. So I'm just going to include those as sort of key reference points. I'm then going to draw around my hand. So try and keep your hand as relaxed as possible, keep your fingers out of the way. We're just really focusing on the thumb and sort of this part of the hand around here. So I'm going to just come up, keeping my pencil vertical, and I'm going to go around. I'm going to go down as far as I can into that sort of webbed section there, and I'm just going to hook up and come towards my other knuckle. Now this is going to look very rough. The reason why I ask you for both of these sort of the pattern making that we do to draw around with an upright pencil is because if you lean in or if you lean out, you are actually altering the shape of the pattern by quite a lot. If you keep your pencil vertical, then you will get quite a sort of a true shape to sort of form and measurement. So that's why we keep it vertical. So I'm going to lift my hand off, and I can see there that I've got my basic template, or my basic shape for my thumb piece. Now we are going to go along and we're going to make a few adjustments to accommodate the sort of the depth of the thumb and the fullness of the sort of flesh on that sort of palm side as well. So here's one I created earlier just to show you where we are actually heading with our thumb, with the creation of our thumb template. So at the moment we're currently working on this side, and then we will, when we cut it out, we will cut out the whole shape to give us our entire thumb. Of course we then reverse this, and then we will get the other hand as well. So that's something that's very important when cutting out your patterns, is remember to reverse your template to get the right pieces for the right glove. So as we look at the thumb, much like when we were looking at moving the points down on the back of the hand, the thumb doesn't just stop as soon as you hit the webbing. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the line that we curved here down by 1 centimetre, and that will give us that extra length in the thumb, which will help it fit much better. It's nothing worse than when you're wearing a glove to realise that they don't go all the way down into your fingers, because that can make them quite uncomfortable and can also make them rub. So good fitting, good length to your fingers and a good fit at the base of the fingers really does help give the glove a really nice fit. So on my diagram, I have already started to work this out. So I've just drawn a line that is at 90 degrees to the first line that I drew, so it's going horizontally across the page. I've also done a straight line through where my first joint on my thumb is, because these are two lines now that we're going to move down, and they need to come down the same distance together. So I've measured 1 centimetre down from my joint line, and I've measured 1 centimetre down from where my sort of thumb webbing started, and I'm going to put two new parallel lines across the page. And what I'm actually going to do now is open out the paper, and I'm going to put them across the whole, not the whole page, because we don't need all of it, but I'm going across the other side for a similar sort of distance, probably slightly longer, to make sure that it will help me when I get the other points in. So I've added those lines, and I've gone all the way across a similar distance on the other side of my page away from that fold. We're now going to add a little measurement at the top of the thumb, just to help accommodate some of the depth of the thumb, so that you don't have your sort of bare thumb sticking out the top of the glove. So I'm actually going to add on about 1/2 centimetre or so here, just to help with that extra length. You could add 1 centimetre if your thumb is really long, but again, you know, it's easier, I suppose, if you were unsure, add 1 centimetre, because you can always cut it off when you're making the glove. I know from having sort of created similar ones recently that 1 centimetre was just a bit too much for me, but 1/2 centimetre gave me a really nicely fitting glove. So again, if your fingers are slightly slimmer, you probably won't need to add as much, but if they're larger, add a little bit more, because you can always cut it off when you're sewing the glove together. So I've added that line at the top of my thumb, and I'm now going to start to refine the shape to create my template and to create the shape, that sort of top shape of my thumb. So I'm going to be working from my new line here and coming up to meet that top line. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here you can see I've started to create my thumb shape, and I've come down and I've just sort of added a curve at the very base of the line here. So there is a very slight taper on the template. We're now going to look at the base of the glove, which is going to be that thumb piece, which is going to be much more of a curved, almost like a sort of a curved circular shape that's going to sweep out from here down and around the line and out. Now I'm looking to get a really good curve, and if I go just below the line, that's absolutely fine. Obviously you don't want to be right down here, but if I'm a few millimeters this side of the line, I'm not going to worry. If I'm that side of the line, I'm probably not going to have enough glove. So I want to kind of keep in mind that my curve sweeps roughly through that mark, which was the base of my thumb mark from earlier. So I've drawn in the shape of that curve, and as it happens, I was able to go right through that line. So now we're going to cut this out and work on the other side a little bit more. When you cut this out, in the initial first cut, we're cutting as though this particular dip here doesn't exist. So I'm just going to draw a line from the start of that, sort of that very tip of that curve, so that it tapers into the thumb outline that I have drawn. And the reason for that is, if I cut the whole shape, it means that when I open this out, this side will be completely flat, and then I can cut out this curved section afterwards. So we're now going to cut this out following the line I've just drawn in, so that we get the whole shape. So I've just done the first round of cutting, and I've opened out the shape, and you can see the type of shape that we have here. And I'm just now going to go in and I'm going to cut that little section out to create that sort of quite important part of our thumb piece. The next line we're going to draw in is this diagonal line here that I've labelled C to D, and we'll come on to the labelling in a moment. The bits of the pattern that we're creating at the moment, so the point over here with the curve, the line that we're about to draw in, actually link to this part of the pattern piece here, and they are quite key points for construction. This is my right hand, and as you can see, the thumb piece is in, and if I twist a little bit more, the piece that I'm just pointing at here that's attached to the main glove is this section here, and then the bit where we've got the diagonal line is actually on your pattern piece. It's this one here. So we'll be going through how we put those together, but what's quite important is that we get them on the pattern piece so that they represent a good width on the thumb. So how do we get that measurement? Again, this is something that isn't, certainly for me, it's not 100% exact science, but I have found a way that makes it work and makes it work with the gloves that I create. So I'm going back to the thumb and I'm looking at this measurement that goes across the thumb, because the piece that we're creating is going to sit across a section of the thumb. So that measurement there is 2.5 centimeters. So I'm going to measure from the edge 2.5 centimeters along this lower line. So this is the lower line that we moved earlier, and I'm going to pop in 2.5 centimeters and I'm going to make a mark. Now I'm going to join that line up to the very edge where this upper line and the edge of the card, or the edge of the paper, sorry, meet. So I'm going to join those up together now. So make sure you go right into that corner, and it's going to look a little bit like that. So we've got that lower line that we drew. We've then measured in the width of our thumb. Now what you might find is this diagonal line can sometimes get a bit long, so when you're constructing the glove you might sort of measure it and only cut to the point where your thumb measurement is. So if I measure mine just to show you, so I can see that that is just over, well, nearly 3 centimeters in fact. So when I'm cutting the glove open and when I'm pinning and constructing it, I might open it to say just after 2.5, and then if I need to, because we tack the glove together, I can open up that last little bit. So that's one way I sort of have found very useful. The other way of doing this particular bit is measuring with your protractor. Now on the patterns I've looked at, the commercial patterns I've looked at, the patterns that I've created, I have often found this measurement to be somewhere in the region of 50 or 55 degrees. So that might be something, if you're not 100% happy with measuring and you prefer to measure this way, it's useful to sort of know both ways, I think, and then you can always sort of problem solve around that. But again, if you're going to draw the line based on measuring it this way, you might want to have a piece of scrap paper underneath and just tape these two down so they're stable. Then when you make the mark and draw the line, nothing's going to move. So I've mentioned that the points that we've just been working from are really helpful when it comes to constructing the glove. So it's also quite useful to mark on, we're going to mark the name of the piece and also the points. Now these can vary depending on what patterns you're looking at, so find a sort of system that works for you. I tend to sort of follow what I'm doing on here with what I'm doing on the trank as well, and I shall show you that in just a moment. So this view that we're looking at now is becoming the right side of the thumb. So on the right side of the thumb, point A is this curved edge over here, B is the upper section, C is that diagonal, sort of the base of the diagonal line we drew, and D is the sort of point up here. On your pattern piece, which is how they then attach to the glove, so we've got A, B, C and D, just to help with construction. Now because we've got left and right, if I flip this over, then the points on the other side of the glove will remain the same again. So A, B, C and D. And likewise, once we've glued this one onto card, I'll flip it over, mark it as left side, and then I will add on the A, B, C and D as well. We're now going to go on and construct the fourchette piece, and after I've done that we'll glue the thumb template and the fourchette onto card, and then we're almost done.